And I'm Christy Derry.
And I'm Matt Beiser. Well, through the 1950s, Detroit was one of America's most important jazz centers, and Michigans from Detroit who received international recognition include Sippy Wallace, Elvin Jones, Tommy Flanagan, Lucky Thompson, and Louis Jackson, and many others.
And did you know that Detroit has been cited as the birthplace of techno music? I have no idea.
I did not. Seems like it would be Berlin or something.
Right, you would think. But I guess it was developed by people who went to high school at Belleville High School, right here in Michigan.
Strange, it all started right here.
Right here.
Right here in the Mitten. Well, since 1991, when he won the WEMU Emily Remler Scholarship for Best Jazz Guitarist, he's been among the busiest freelance guitarists in the greater Detroit region. And as a sideman, he appears on countless recordings and jingles and has performed alongside Motown jazz legends and all kinds of great musicians, performing at more than 4,000 gigs in his career. Please give a warm welcome to Jake Reichbart.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks.
It's great to have you here.
My pleasure.
So, how did you get started playing the guitar?
Oh, wow. The guitar. Well, like most anybody else, in my age, I listened to the Beatles. I loved the Beatles, and that got me hooked right from the start.
And was it guitar?
It was a guitar-oriented band, so the guitar caught my ear. But after many years listening to the Beatles and enjoying the Beatles, I looked for something more, so I got more interested in jazz. But the guitar is an excellent instrument to apply to jazz as well, so I stuck with the guitar.
So you had a few other, did you have any other major inspirations when you started to move into jazz? You moved away from the Beatles?
Well, yes, I started listening, of course, because I am interested in the guitar. I started listening to jazz guitarists. So I would cite Detroit great Kenny Burrell, who was a great jazz guitarist, world-renowned, and others like Joe Pass, and modern players like Pat Metheny and Alan Holdsworth, and contemporary guitar players who really took the guitar to a different level. So I wanted to kind of try my hand at that. So
were you self-taught?
Actually, I am self-taught. I did not take any formal lessons, although I taught myself to read as well. So I do, of course, play by ear, and all my arrangements are my own, and I do them by ear. I did teach myself to read so I can interact and work with other musicians. As you mentioned in the introduction, that I did jingles and a lot of studio work, and in order to be able to do that kind of work, you have to know how to read and interpret chord symbols and work with other musicians. So I did train myself to do some of those things.
So when you first started training yourself, you first started really teaching yourself the guitar, what was the first thing you started doing? You started playing maybe in a restaurant or with friends?
Well, I think most guitar players start with chords, just playing chord shapes like that. And after that, you start to get into leads and try to play. And of course, I was interested in all forms of music, rock and metal and Van Halen, of course. When I was a kid, he came out in 1977 with the first Van Halen, and so that was very inspirational as well. So all forms of guitar playing were inspirational to me, and are basically what brought me to be able to do what I do now. So even there's some Van Halen somewhere in there what I'm doing here.
In that jazz you're playing?
There certainly is.
Wow.
Now, you've played for all sorts of people, from Presidents of the United States to the average Joe. Is there a difference between?
Actually, that's a really good question. No, there really isn't. There isn't any difference in the way I perform. I always consider myself as if I'm playing at Carnegie Hall, and in my mind, I'm performing the greatest concert ever. No, so I play the same way. Whether if it's at a restaurant that I play a lot of restaurant gigs, or whether it's the governor's inaugural ball, or president of any company, or the president of the United States, indeed.
It's all sort of the same thing?
For me, it's the same. I always play, my art form is the music that other people like to hear as background, so it's a perfect deal for me.
Well, we'd love to hear an example.
Well, sure. I'd like to, first I'll start with some classic jazz. I'll play some blues in a jazzy kind of a manner. you very much.
Love it.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about that song.
Well, it's a blues. Blues is a classic American form of music that was then taken by jazz musicians who took it from its basic form of the 3 chords and elaborated on it and added a lot of chord substitutions and playing a lot of interesting licks and lines. And those jazz greats that you mentioned in your introduction are among the people that started that revolution really in the 30s and took it to a greater height in the 40s and 50s, a style called bebop. So there's some bebop in there that I just played. So it's like jazz, blues, and bebop mixed together in a solo guitar style.
Okay. Is that song in particular one that means something to you, or?
It's meaningful to me just because my heroes played in this style and I enjoy doing the same. So
Very nice.
Yeah.
Now, I could hear that being played at a wedding so easily.
Well, I do a lot of weddings. It's true. I play a lot of wedding ceremonies. In fact, one of the things that has happened with economy, and unfortunately, is although I very much enjoy playing with bands, and I sometimes prefer playing with bands because you have more interaction, you enjoy working with other people. What has happened is that the economy has forced a lot of budget cuts. Luckily, with the guitar, I'm able to go in to places and situations where previously they would have hired a trio, but now, unfortunately, the bass player and the drummer have to stay at home.
So you end up by
So
yourself
I
more
end
and more
up
often.
still being able to do some work. So I do a lot of cocktail parties, and I play wedding ceremonies. One of the specialties that I've been developing in recent years is the wedding ceremony.
All right. Well, we're going to hope to hear another performance from you in our next
Certainly.
video. We've got to take a quick break here. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Celebrate Michigan. We are talking with Jake Reichbart, a very talented jazz guitarist who's here with us in the studio.
So you live in Ann Arbor now.
That's
How
correct.
did you get there?
Complete chance. I was residing back in the early 90s, in New York, actually. And one day I was a young man with just wind blowing in my hair. There was a lot of it, a lot more of it back then. And I just decided to make a road trip from New York to LA. And I just packed a guitar and an amplifier in the back of the car and just decided this will take me 6 months, a year. I'm just going to travel from place to place, town to town, see what happens. I got to Detroit. I stayed with some people that I met, and I picked up a newspaper, the Metro Times, still around to this day, and I saw a listing for a jam session at a place called the Bird of Paradise, which was a jazz club in Ann Arbor. It was a Sunday evening. I drove out. I remember it clearly because it was just a few weeks after the passing of Miles Davis at the time, so we played Miles Davis songs all night. And that was basically it. Somebody who I met there said, hey, I play at the Earl next door. There's a restaurant. Why don't you come sit in with me on Wednesday? The drummer said, hey, I got this session going on at the Blind Pig. Why don't you stop by tomorrow? So I ended up staying there, stayed with somebody, stayed on somebody's couch, and here we are 20 years later. And I still play at the Earl. I've been playing there regularly now for the past 18 years, in fact. So.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
So is it mostly Ann Arbor you play in, or do you go all over the state?
In fact, I do play mostly in Ann Arbor because I got some regular restaurant gigs, which are local, but I travel all over the state. In the summer, I'll travel up and down the coast of the Lake Michigan, Traverse City, play up in Mackinac, you know, the UP, wherever the gig takes me. So whether it's a club or a wedding ceremony or anything like that.
All right. Well, would you like to play another piece for us?
Oh, I'd love to. Maybe I can play tribute to a Michigan native, Stevie Wonder. I'll try to tie
That
a
would be
couple of tunes
great.
together. Thank you.
Always great to hear a Stevie
Thanks.
Wonder tune.
In case anybody didn't recognize, that was My Cherie Amour at the beginning, and then Lately, another song.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks.
So when we come back, we'll talk more with Jake and get a final performance.
Very nice.
Welcome back to Celebrate Michigan. I'm Christy Derry, and we have with us today Jake Reichbart, who is a very talented musician. And actually, Matt is out in the audience right now, and he's got a few questions.
Yes, I've got quite a few questions for Jake out here.
Yes, I wanted to find out if, what jingles did you play?
Well, back in the 90s, there was quite an industry of jingles happening here in Detroit, especially as it relates to the car industry. So there was a core group of musicians, myself included, among a few other guitar players. For every instrument, there were 2 or 3 or 4 players who were the contract players for jingles. And myself, and among other people, played on a lot of car and truck commercials, hotel commercials, mostly car and automobile-related jingles. So Ford, Dodge, Michigan, So that work has changed in recent years, of course. Budgets have been cut, but there's some legacy there. We have a lot of jingles out still playing to this day.
You said that you go to Traverse City sometimes
Sure.
in the summer and
Sure.
along Lake Michigan. What places do you play in Traverse City?
Well, in Traverse City, I had one of the things that I do, because I play a lot of weddings, I'm in and out of a lot of the country clubs and golf clubs all over the state, really. Primarily, of course, in the greater Detroit region, but all up and down the coast. If there's a hotel, if there's a golf club or a yacht club or some kind of a club where people can gather and there's a banquet hall, chances are that I've been there. So I couldn't tell you the exact name of a place that I've been to Traverse City, but there's a beautiful museum up there, if you remind me of the name of it. I played there too. They have a beautiful concert hall. I played in there, and there's a great hotel right on the beach. I've played there, but I've played so many of these gigs, I couldn't even remember the names of the places. Kind of blend into one big blur after a while.
Thank you.
Sure.
My question was, do you play other kinds of guitars besides just hollow bodies, or do you play?
Yes, I do. I have solid body guitars, especially for that work that I mentioned, that we talked about before, the jingles. I have a variety of solid body Stratocasters and Gibson guitars, and nowadays you can emulate any kind of sound with digital emulators. So you can play one guitar and plug it in, and it will imitate sounds of just about anything. But when you wanted a sound of a Stratocaster, you had to have a Stratocaster. So I actually have 3 different Stratocasters because of different vintages, and each has an own sound. It's true that I don't use much of them anymore these days because now solo guitar is my main gig. So mostly I use this $300 guitar, and that's my main instrument these days.
Well, would you like to play us another piece?
I sure would. One of the things I'd like to mention about jazz is that in order to connect with younger people who think that jazz is an old form of music, I do what jazz musicians have always done, which is to take the pop music of the day and make it into jazz. So how about some Katy Perry here? Thank you very much.
Wow. So do you see evidence of that working, getting younger people over to
Absolutely.
jazz?
When I play at all my gigs, people come up to me, young kids say, they don't say it in these words, but basically what they're saying, oh, this is jazz, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
Because people think that's an old people's music. Well, it's not. It's really a music that renews all the time, and you always take the pop music of the day and make it into jazz. So that's kind of my job.
And you can just listen to any song and
Just about, if it has a melody and it has some chords, yes.
That's
basically.
incredible.
Oh,
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
You've been a wonderful
Great to
guest.
It's been really
Thank you.
great.
If you would like to learn more or see more of Jake, you can check out his YouTube page at youtube.com/user/JReichbart.
Just YouTube him, he'll be there.
Yes. So
Thanks
thank
so
you
much, Jake. We'll see you next time. If you don't mind, could you play us out here?
Sure.